everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell, and it's time to talk some Major League Soccer. We're talking the Supporter Shield race, transfer updates, areas of need for a few different teams in the aforementioned Supporter Shield race. Here with me to break it all down is a man who has never thrown anything into the stands, nor, as far as I know, been on the receiving end of anything thrown into the stands. It's Joe Lowery. Hello, Joe.
You know, actually, Taylor, that's true for both sides of that. And I wish it wasn't. Not because I'm trying to huck things at people in the stands, Nuhu style, but because I would love, just once in my life, to catch a T-shirt. You know what I mean? Like, you're there, you're in the proximity, one's coming to your section, you can see it, this is the one I've got a chance to grab, and it just never comes to you. Like, the odds have never been in my favor. It's frustrating. I'm hoping that changes someday.
What would you least like to be on the receiving end? I feel like I would go hockey puck. I think between that and, like, line drive foul ball, at least maybe you can see the foul ball coming and catch it. Hockey puck, I feel like it's going right in my face.
I'm thinking hockey puck to the throat is got to be, like, deadly, you know? The good news is they got that plastic thing. I've never been to a hockey game. This is probably showing. They got that big plastic thing, so I feel like you're probably pretty safe, because if they didn't, I think we would have casualties.
Might be whites there.
Yeah.
That voice you just heard, Joe, it's lovely to have you. San Diego FC, for people wondering what Joe's username is today. Joining us, rounding out the crew, a man who's excited to see Angel Di Maria and Leandro Paredes sign as homegrown players for Inter Miami next season. It's Jeff Rueter. Hello, Jeff.
It's inevitable. I mean, it's amazing how quickly those roots that Argentina has tried to set up in the States, and especially Miami, have like really borne bountiful, if aged, fruit.
Jeff, I went with my original introduction. Yes. I did have in my notes to change it at the last minute to Mr. Meat Raffle himself, which sounds very explicit and not PG.
Yeah, it does.
But
Jeff, it's not Pride Month anymore. I don't know if we can do that. Yeah.
Jeff was informing me and Joe what exactly a meat raffle is, which is apparently a Midwestern convention that sounds awesome but dangerous.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a fundraiser, and so you'll buy tickets, and they're usually like $1 per, and so you might have 20 of them in front of you, and then they'll draw, and then you can go to the cooler of very nice cuts of meat, steaks, chops, roasts, liver sometimes. Often, actually, there's like one liver item just to like put you on edge and be like, I don't want to get picked last, because it's always the last one. So, I said this very casually, as if this was something the whole country would understand, before remembering I live in this very small pocket of second Scandinavia. My apologies.
I think we're all in. I think like as soon as you started explaining it pre-show, Taylor and I were 100% on board, to the point where I'm already wondering how we can host our own meat raffle here at TSS in support of some good cause, and also wondering how I can get to one ASAP. So Taylor, I'm in, except for the liver part, but the rest was great.
The nerd in me is really intrigued by getting the later picks, because, like, to my understanding, so many things that are now very expensive cuts of meat and very expensive like items to buy in a restaurant or to buy to cook for yourself started out as the sort of like thing that nobody wanted, that then restaurants had to learn how to use. Like short ribs, I think, is one of those.
Chicken wings is another one
of those.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a few that I tend to go for in the supermarket that I am now led to believe are becoming more popular, and I'm nervous that eventually those will be the expensive ones. I feel like chicken
Release
thighs,
the tapes, Taylor. Come on.
Chicken thighs are suddenly more expensive than chicken breasts, and I don't like it.
If we get to a point where Vegas is setting the odds on the next like sleeper trend cut of meat, like, we've lost to the industry entirely.
Yeah,
it might already be out there, so we might have lost. I haven't checked the result yet.
Same pork shoulder. Pork shoulder is the new pork belly.
I love pork
That's
shoulder.
The way it's going to be. See, this is my concern. Because right now it's like relatively inexpensive, but pretty soon
Say
I feel like it's going to be the most expensive.
Save it for the Patreon feed.
All right. That does feel like more of a Patreon thing. Instead, let's talk some Major League Soccer, shall we? We're going to look at some of the weekend's results that were, from the perspective, Joe, of teams that are vying for that Supporter Shield race. And we've got a few, including two who played each other this weekend in the Hell is Real Derby that Columbus Crew fans will want to hear more about, and I'm led to believe Cincinnati fans want to hear nothing about.
Yeah, and this is one of the games that really does, I think, resonate all across Major League Soccer, or at least outside of those markets, at a higher level than almost any other game in the league's calendar. You had a lot of build-up to this game even before you get to the actual on-field side of things. You know that there is a real dislike for both of these teams. I still think one of the lasting bits, even if Apple chopped it up so much, one of the lasting bits from the MLS documentary was getting the back and forth of Will Fernandez and Pat Noonan, of like, you get Will Fernandez's in-depth, like, tactical, hands-on training stuff and all of his tactical nous. And Pat Noonan just sort of comes across as the, let him play, guys. Like that, the guy who just is a lot more hands-off. And it sounds like that was all kind of spliced together, and there's a bit of beef imputed into that discussion. But you get all of that buildup that we have from watching Onside. Then you get, before the game starts, Kevin Denke, one of the newbies in this FC Cincinnati team, posting on social media like, hey, tomorrow's the day. Like, tomorrow is rivalry day. You get him clearly bought in.
Tomorrow is tomorrow, which I thought was an interesting tweet.
Yeah, well, tomorrow's tomorrow, Taylor. You can argue with that? I'm not going to
argue with
that. I'm not brave enough to do that, frankly. But you get Denke, like one of the new pieces of this rivalry, one of the new main pieces of this rivalry, bigging up the game. Then you get Nick Hagland, who's out injured. In the Bailey, like with all the FC Cincinnati supporters banging the drums pregame, and the Bailey was rocking for this game. And the game starts in a way that was entirely worthy of some of the buildup that we've had to this match, where you get Pavel Buka scoring inside of 50 seconds or whatever it was in this game. Cincinnati just jumping all over Columbus and really holding that advantage for a good chunk of the first half. Evander grabs a goal from distance, which is what he does in the 5th minute of this game, and it's 2-0 Cincinnati. The place is rocking. One of those games that I'm jealous I'm not there just to experience the atmosphere, because it looked amazing.
Just to cut in quick, like it's become one of the best looking games of any MLS year, either stadium, by the way, which is amazing. So credit to the fans in that, just phenomenal to watch.
100%. And the game really did deliver that. It's 2-0 to Cincinnati, and then you blink. Maybe it's a slow blink, one that lasts, 85 minutes or so. And all of a sudden, Columbus have scored 4 unanswered. And the last one, and I love this the most, is Taha Habrun, who's the Columbus Crew homegrown, getting his goal in this rivalry game, the game that means more to the Columbus Crew than any other game in the regular season schedule. This was it was a well-played game. It was an entertaining game. There was some really awesome tactical stuff happening where Cincy were pressing really high, really man-oriented, trying to press everybody basically but Patrick Schulte and allow him to pick his pass, but as soon as he would make the pass, they would jump and force turnovers. Columbus had mixed results dealing with that stuff. Eventually, they break the press and they get on the score sheet at the other end via Diego Rossi, and that's their first goal of the game that gets them back into the game. Yeah, this game was great. MLS needs more of these. No notes, as far as I'm concerned.
So what accounts for the turnaround then, Joe, in your mind? To go from 2-0 up with a raucous home crowd and everything kind of going your way, the pressing is largely working, to suddenly they've scored 4 unanswered. Miles Robinson has had maybe the worst day of his professional career.
Yeah, I mean, that own goal was a really difficult one for Miles Robinson, and he came out and owned it. I think he kind of hopped in front of the firing squad a little bit here in a way that he probably didn't need to entirely. But Taylor, for me, when it comes to how this game turns around for Columbus, it's them doing what they do best. It is them feeling out the pressure, adapting, finding the weaknesses, and exploiting those weaknesses. Columbus did not immediately jump into this game. It's Ibrahim Aliou playing as the right wing back in this game for Columbus. By my reckoning, I think it's the first game that he's played in that spot in his MLS career. And he kind of gets jumped by Lucas Engel for the opening goal that Cincinnati scored. And in general, the Crew were on the back foot. But they're still trying to build, and they're still looking for, hey, how can we find the gaps in this? And the way that they break the press is Darlington Nagbe coming out of the back, dropping to get on the ball. Evander is man-marking him, and that's probably a matchup you like if you're Columbus, if we're being honest, right? Where you can go and skirt past the opposition's luxury player. Not that Evander never defends, but you get the idea. Darlington Nagbe drives in, he breaks the press, and then lays the ball out, and Columbus are away. Eventually, they start finding more and more of those gaps. There weren't a ton of super clear-cut chances for the Crew in this game, but they did enough to find the holes in the press, and that's Columbus's whole thing. That is the thing that they are best at. There's only one other team in MLS that's maybe as good at it as they are, and that's San Diego, who we'll get to later. But it is, and this game was a reminder of the fact that it is so incredibly difficult to press Columbus and to do it well and to not give up chances at the other end.
Jeff,
it's a full 90 focus. Absolutely, yeah.
Jeff, it's always a tricky question to ask, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Is this a bigger win for Columbus or a bigger loss for FC Cincinnati?
So usually I think that there's a clear one or the other. Mm-hmm. I think this is both. I think this is both the loss Cincinnati couldn't afford to have in the manner they couldn't afford to have it, and then the win that Columbus, maybe they needed it less. So I guess if I'm saying who's affected by this more on the other side, maybe it is Cincinnati. Possibly because they were the home team and they were up 2-0. I think you look, and you've already mentioned Miles Robinson. I'm going to throw Matt Miazga on the pile because when you look at the 4th goal, and so at this point they're already they've blown the lead. They're in losing territory, and there's this ridiculous sequence basically where the ball goes from Schulte, pretty quickly advances, and I'm trying to even remember how this happens, but basically Celentano is trying to like play this ball. It was kind of a hospital ball, right, Joe? Am I remembering it was Celentano who played it? But basically, there's a ball in between Teenage Hdebi and Matt Miazga, and it's very clearly in Matt Miazga's zone. Matt Miazga plays in the center of this back three between Hdebi on the left side, who came in off the bench, so he's also coming in a little bit rusty, and on the right side, you do have Miles Robinson, who obviously has been starting. So it's usually pretty well worked that if you are the anchor center back in a back three, you are the vocal leader. You are an extension of the goalkeeper who's barking, shield left, screen right, pick up that run, drop back, all these I've got him, that sort of thing. And there's a ball that's just sitting. It's one of those where it looks like it's played on a Club World Cup surface because the spin just kind of kills it. And so it's not going to continue to roll all the way over to Teenage Hdebi. It's staying in the proximity of Miazga, and Miazga's just kind of standing and watching Hdebi. And then Columbus picks up the ball, scurries very quickly, scores the goal, and immediately Miazga turns to Hdebi and does the Francisco Calvo arms up in the air, what are you doing sort of bit. And it's such an unconvincing, like, when I think of FC Cincinnati and what their strengths are right now, it's twofold. One, it is Evander and Denke are figuring it out. He scored from deep. We talked about this last week, right? The second part of it is that back line is supposed to be probably the best center back tandem in Major League Soccer, right? Whether it is Hdebi or if it's someone else starting on the left side, right? Like the idea usually is that between Miazga and Robinson, you've leaned in and you've brought in, let's say, 2 of the 5 best domestic center backs in the league, just on like reputation, if nothing else. And it's still such an imperfect balance. It still doesn't look like they have that sort of closed down game mentality. And so to be able to not just concede it, but then make it worse, where yes, wins is the first tiebreaker in Major League Soccer, which does make it a better entertainment product. But goal difference will matter at a certain point, probably, with how close this race is. And so to be conceding those extra goals and the manner in which they did it, it's really concerning, especially because Roman Celentano is not a goalkeeper who's going to scurry off his line to help with the defensive action. So if your center backs aren't able to do that sort of work, and if you're out, Nwobodo, who's been injured, and so Tabra and Anunga started again, you don't have those shields anymore. And so you need that center back tandem to be in lockstep, and they were far from it, especially after they conceded the first goal.
Are there areas of need, Jeff, you think, for FC Cincinnati this summer? Are there ways for them to immediately strengthen, or is it just about building more team consistency and team connections?
Yeah, I think it's connections. I think that if they can get past this and just, it's pretty much a full slate already on Wednesday for MLS. So if they're able to kind of get back on track soon, maybe they'll be able to get past this until they face Columbus again, inevitably in the playoffs. But I think midfield, I think that you're looking at right now midfielders who play 900, have played at least 900 minutes. They played 10 full 90s so far. Cincinnati doesn't really have anybody who's proactive with ball recoveries. They also don't really have anyone who's proactive at winning tackles, true tackles. So that's when you're also counting when they push a player off the ball and it's not officially a tackle because they got back on it, but it slowed the progress. They had to recirculate, or you fouled the guy. And so, I guess you stopped him too. Like, these are just the sorts of things that when you think of good defensive midfield work, when you think of like Tyler Adams at his best, those are the sorts of things that he's doing. He's effective at getting players to slow their progress, and he's claiming every loose ball he can, right? It's like that Leeds versus Liverpool game that made everyone fall in love with him until he got hurt, like that game. You need to be able to do more, and right now you're not seeing that. Like, Pavel Buka has looked really good in phases, and I think that there's a lot that he does bring to this team, so I'm not saying it's to replace that, but unfortunately it probably is. Like, Anunga, who I've been really high on since he was in the USL. He was on one of my old watch lists that I had of like USL players with the most potential. He's made really good on that, with Nashville and now with Cincinnati. But the issue is he wasn't really brought in to be a starting defensive midfielder on a supporter shield contender. He's brought in to be the guy who can come in 800, 1,200 minutes off the bench over the course of the season. He's already over 1,100 minutes according to Opta. So I would say it's midfield, and it's a question of like how long is Nwobodo out, and like how much can you really even trust that if he comes back again this time, will he be back to 2023, or is it going to be like you saw this summer where it was like on off? So midfield, I would say just simply you need more people to shield what is apparently not a well-constructed, not well-constructed, but like not a seamless, like ironclad back line and a goalkeeper who wants to stay on his line.
So, Joe, this result puts FC Cincinnati in third in the Supporters Shield race. We've got Philly on top, San Diego, Cincinnati, Nashville, Columbus. For Columbus, what do they need to do to kind of remain in Supporters Shield contention to keep moving up that table?
I think this is a huge win for them. And to go back to the question that you asked earlier, I think this is a bigger win for Columbus than it is a loss for Cincinnati, because this is the kind of win that gets Columbus like firmly fixed in that Shield race. You ship off 3 points to Cincinnati here, and things get a lot harder. For the Crew, I think what they need is exactly what they're going out and looking for. Tom Boger's reporting that they're in for Wissam Abu Ali, who is a forward playing for Al Ahly, Palestine International. They are looking for...
Which Al Ahly?
That one. The Egyptian one. I was trying to figure out how to do... We always do not that one, and I didn't realize, just drop the not. It's simple.
We have that one. Yeah.
It is that
one.
Yes.
It is that one. That John Adams, that Al Ahly. I think they're looking at another player who can rotate into the front line. In Al Ahly's case, in Abu Ali's case, excuse me, that would look like, I would imagine, a fairly significant outlay to bring him into the club. And if you're going to make a summer transfer move, you probably have a pretty clear vision for how that player is going to impact your team. They're looking for another player to be goal dangerous, and I think they have the pieces right now to win MLS Cup. But can they establish themselves in a better spot if they go out and grab one more? Yeah, of course they can. And with Columbus, they're not in a position where they're absolutely desperate for another player, where that player has to come in and be everything for them right from the jump. Otherwise, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to compete for MLS Cup. Columbus is already in the running, right? I mean, they're already up high enough in the Shield race where they've got a legit chance to go and do everything that they want to do this season and more. But could they improve their odds slightly with one more piece in that part of the field? Yeah, I think so.
But will Fernandez be able to use anyone they sign as a wingback, as he seems to be able to do so often?
Yes.
How is he so good at this? How is he so good at getting his team? Like, Joe, I feel like more often than not, the back-heel write-ups for the Crew were like, he used a player in a position they never played before, and it was fine. And I don't understand how he keeps being able to do this.
It's amazing, and I think it speaks to the clarity that he has about how he wants his team to play, and the clarity that everybody in that roster has about how they want to play, right? If you understand exactly what the responsibilities are of your position, you can go and play that other position, right? You can go and play a position you haven't played before because you understand what to do, right? That's the only reason why, to get philosophical about it, that's the only reason why you can play your default position in the first place. It's because you understand what's required of you, and you found a way to make your skills an impactful part of executing that role. If you understand a different position, then you can play that too, right? Like, players can go wherever they want. It's just a matter of whether they're going to be good at it. And to be good at it, yes, you need to have the skills that apply in that spot. And Nance is a very, very good identifier of talent that can be moved and maybe used in different ways. But you also have to cognitively understand how to execute that role and to know what's required of you in that role. And having clarity coming down from the coach and from the club philosophy is like maybe even more than half the battle in that case. So, yeah, would not shock me if we get another player popping up in a random spot for Columbus. It is also, by the way, sorry, I know we need to move on.
No, go ahead.
It's wild how little we've talked about Columbus this year, right? And it's not just us, right? I think this is true for basically everybody covering MLS. And I was thinking about this yesterday in preparing for this show. The reason is because they're so good, and they've been so good for so long, right? So I suppose I just wanted to drop that as we close. Columbus are still a huge threat. I think they're absolutely still an MLS Cup threat, regardless of whether they grab one more player in the summer window. They're still a threat for the Shield. Everything is in play for them. And Will Fernandez continues to do an incredible job. These players have done an incredible job. The Crew are in play for everything, and I am very eager to keep watching them this year.
The only other thing I'll say, we're probably also talking about Columbus less because they don't have one of the best players in the league right now.
Sure. Yep.
And they did for the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yep.
With Kucherov.
That matters
so
too.
If they bring in someone like that, right, and I think that, the profile of striker makes a ton of sense if they're able to get it over the line. Like, I think that we could be in territory for that, absolutely. Yep. But until then, right now, like, it is still Columbus doing Columbus things, which is excellent. But I think at this point, it's like surveying the rest of the field to see are they as good, better, or worse than Columbus is still very much a lens through which I am kind of like determining MLS Cup readiness, which is a testament to what they've been doing.
Yes.
Well, speaking of potential best players in the league, I am assuming that the 2025 Lionel Messi MLS MVP presented by Lionel Messi will go to Lionel Messi. But, Joe, if it doesn't, can you make a case for Anders Dreyer being an MVP, at the very least, candidate?
100%. Yeah, I was writing about this for Backheel earlier this week, and I was thinking about, wow, this MVP race is so great. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then I just sort of sat there and stared off into space for 5 seconds and realized No, it's not. This MVP
Nope.
race is terrible, and we all know exactly what's going to happen because it's going to be Lionel Messi. If we can construct, and this is what I wrote about for Backfield, if we can construct a fictional MVP race, then the race is great, right? Because if Lionel Messi's on the ballot, he's going to win it. That's how this works. It worked last year when he played like 500 minutes. It's going to work this year.
Justifiably so, though, right? Like, it's not as though
yes.
we're just giving it to him for his name this season.
Totally. If the world that I constructed is one where we imagine that Messi's 24 instead of 38, and he's now in his second full season in Miami. He's come straight over from Argentina's top flight. And even if you strip out the messiness of it all, right? If he's just a rando who's playing really good ball in MLS, who doesn't really have that global name recognition, he still might be the MVP frontrunner. Like, he's one of two in a kind of 2.5, 3 maybe horse race. He has scored 2 goals apiece in each of his last 5 MLS games, which has never happened before. He is very much part of this. But to make the case for Anders Dreyer, who is the other atypical number 10 that would give voters in this fictional world pause, he has matched Messi non-penalty goal contribution for non-penalty goal contribution. Messi has the better per 90 rate because he's played fewer minutes in the league, but they both sit at 22 combined non-penalty goals and non-penalty goals and assists so far this season. He is kept in lockstep with the greatest player of all time, and Anders Dreyer is the single biggest impact player. It's hard to pick that because San Diego are really good, but he is the single biggest impact player for San Diego FC, who are topping the Western Conference. They are, and this has gone under the radar, they're going to be the greatest expansion team of all time when you look at the regular season. They're going to beat LAFC's points total from, what year was that, 2018, I think?
Yeah, 2018.
They're going to beat the Chicago Fire's points per game total, I think, from way back in 98 or whatever their first season was in the league. They are, by points and points per game, the single greatest expansion team ever. And if you're spearheading that effort for a team that has literally never existed before, and also matching the greatest player of all time for goal contributions, and clearly changing games, it is Anders Dreyer's brace that gives San Diego a 2-1 win over Chicago this past week. Like, the case is a simple one. It's the one I've just laid out, and honestly, I'm going to be tempted when it comes time to put down my vote on my ballot. So maybe I'm being too fatalistic about all this, and maybe it won't be a Messi walkaway, but
No, it will.
Yeah.
It will. Yeah, it will be. But it's incredible to see how they've continued to do that, right? Like, and I think that part of the reasons, and we were talking about this late in the last episode too, it's just kind of a fatigue of these sorts of things. Is we've had so many points records, we've had so many best expansions ever, we've had so many best first 2 months, whatever, between St. Louis as well, who won the Western Conference their year, albeit it will be, if San Diego sustains this rate, they will have done it, as Joe laid out, with more points and more points per game. So, like, that is where we're picking nit here if you're a St. Louis fan. But I think what surprised me is that early in the season, I was expecting there would be that sort of mid-season drop-off where either their depth was tested to an amount that couldn't keep up with the squad that Tyler Heaps and Mikey Veras had been able to pull together, right, with their backroom staff, and that teams would figure out how to slow down Anders Dreyer and Chucky Lozano, and instead Lozano's actually, like, heated up as the season has progressed, which has been nice to see, especially compared to like March and April. But no, I mean, they look so much further along than anything we've seen before from an expansion team. They look so much more composed, put together. Throw in Seattle in 2009 onto the pile, as well as like a really impressive launch that everyone kind of thought changed our perception of what was possible in a first season. I still think it's just incredible that the work that they've done, the team that they have pulled together. There are still some weaknesses. Like, I think that there are areas they can shore up.
Oh, for sure.
But, the fact that they aren't more weaknesses than strengths at this point, that in its own right is a testament when you look at like how Cincinnati and others started.
Would one of those potential vulnerabilities be how many goals they are conceding? Because that feels unsustainable. Right now, they have won 4 of their last 5. They're in second place in the Supporters' Shield standings. Scored 17 goals over those 5 games, but conceded 12. And when I look at their numbers, I think they've conceded 30 on the year. That is a sizable chunk to have conceded in the last 5. Yep. Any explanations for that one, Jeff? Or any, maybe, I guess, areas for concern is established, so any ways of solving that?
Yeah, unfortunately, when they built the squad, I think a lot of people looked at the goalkeeper position and said, you're going with CJ Dos Santos as your starter. And not in a, like...
This guy did.
Yeah.
This guy right here did. Yep.
Because you're a genius, and there's good reason for it. Like, look. There's
Thanks, Jeff.
There are backups that you look at in the league, and you say like, maybe like, okay, so let's just go through the litany of expansion teams again, right? Bobby Shuttleworth randomly puts in 2 very, very good years for Minnesota United. Brad Stuver is the gold example of this, I would say, of like a career backup who then finds a starting opportunity and just doesn't let it go for 5 years, which has just been remarkable to follow along. Joe Willis was kind of a journeyman as well until Nashville revitalized his stock. There's so many examples of this. And so, but there was always like a different demeanor where you're looking, and most of those guys I've listed are pure shot stoppers. Right? When you think of like especially like a Willis or a Stuver, their strengths are in goal. They're in the 6-yard box. It's that command of the area, building wall, that sort of thing. And Dos Santos didn't really have those vibes about him. And when you really look at right now, so like I use goals prevented rate, which is a statistic that compares expected goals on target. So that is like shot place, only shots that are on target. It doesn't count errant shots that go off goal or are blocked, against the goals conceded. And then you average that out based on shot volume. So it's not just like, okay, you face one shot and it was like point blank and you saved it, so you are the best goalkeeper in the world, even if the other guy saved 50 and only conceded 3, right? So you're trying to weigh these sorts of things out.
Sure.
And all of this is a long-winded way of saying that CJ Dos Santos has been a below-average goalkeeper at shot stopping in Major League Soccer, and it does show when you just watch, like you said, like some of the goals that they concede, you look at and say, like, I'm surprised, right? Like it's either in the build-up, it's either in that final sequence, because they do have a little. I think center back is also another area where we're wondering about their depth coming into this, and so. You're talking about the base of your spine, and usually if you have issues with the base of your spine, as I have lived since getting kicked in the spine in 2019, you're going to have recurring problems all throughout the body. So it feels like something that they should maybe focus on to shore up, and maybe should call their occupational therapist a second time.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I love that spine shot, Graham. What I will say, Jeff, wow, not even Graham today. That's
wow.
Shameful. I'm not a genius like Taylor, that we can say for sure. One thing that I will say in all this is the LA Galaxy were like a bottom 10 team.
I'm still trying to figure out goals prevented rate over here, so let's not throw genius around too willy-nilly, shall we?
Fair enough. LA Galaxy, bottom 10 defensive team last year based off of non-penalty XG allowed. This year, San Diego are a top 10 team in that regard. So Dos Santos has not been amazing for them. He started hot, really hot, and has kind of faded a little bit down the stretch. They've already signed him to an extension. There is some belief in him as a goalkeeper. I don't think he's the primary issue. I think the primary issue is that they're still shoring up a couple of their defensive phases. When you think about their rest defense, I think San Diego, by and large, are quite good at it. But when the game does get stretched, we saw Lawrence and Ali just torch them right in the open field in that 4-3 loss to Houston. Their center backs are not ones you feel absolutely amazing about defending in transition, which is okay because that's not their like absolute primary responsibility. But it is a really, really big one for San Diego. There are really only 3 center backs on this team that are healthy right now because Andres Reyes is done for the season injury-wise. They need another center back. And I would expect if they're going to sign anybody this summer, that's where they're going to start. That's the area that I would look at first and foremost. But some of these goals that they allowed are a natural byproduct of how they want to play, right? They do want to be expansive. They do want to take risks from the back. That's how they get their second goal, I believe, against Chicago over the weekend. Is Chicago are pressing them really, really high, like very, very high, very aggressively. That's become a real trend for teams that are trying to go up against San Diego and knock them off their game. San Diego do the Columbus thing, where it took them a little bit of time to work their way through the press. Eventually, they figure out the weakness, which is playing through the weak side fullback, and they find space and they go attack and they score at the other end. They want to play open. They want to be risky in their own third. That is naturally going to lead to chances. Really, all things considered, when you look at their numbers on the season, they've done a remarkable job of limiting those chances. They're not a best-in-class defensive team, but I think they could legitimately be like one center back and one starting level defensive midfielder next to Jeppe Sverskov. I love Anibal Godoy. He's been great this season, but he is not a defensive transition
Short-term
monster
solution,
anymore.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
He's a, you want his role. You want him to play fewer minutes next year than he's playing this year, right? That's how I look at Anibal Godoy. I think they're those 2 moves away from being like a noticeably better defensive team, and they're already not bad at it, really.
All right, that's 3 teams in the Supporter Shield race discussed. Several more still to get to. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and do just that. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. We continue to talk about teams in the Supporter Shield race. Joe, a team that none of us here were ever concerned about and always knew would be in the Supporters Shield race and never thought had the bottom falling out at all is Inter Miami, who have now won 5 straight. Lionel Messi, I believe, legally can't stop scoring goals at this point.
Correct.
Another win this weekend. They are back into that Supporters Shield race with the 2-1 win over Nashville.
Yeah, they've got his dog, so if he doesn't score a brace in every
That'll do
game, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's not something to be trifled with.
Don't keep a man from his dog.
Absolutely not.
It's the premise of 4 John Wick movies, essentially.
4.
So I like
that.
that.
And a spin-off.
There we go.
Messi, notably a big fan of movie franchises, so I think this really does make sense.
I can't believe he hasn't showed up in one. Now that we mentioned that.
That's actually crazy. You're right. Like the guy who kicks. What was it? There's one action movie where Ronaldinho randomly shows up. It was a Statham movie, I swear, and he tries to kick. It was like a prison break sort of movie. Keep going. This lives in my brain.
I mean, Ronaldinho literally might have been involved in some prison break scheming, but I'm
King
glad
of
that
the
it was in
Grift.
a movie in this one.
Yeah.
Indeed. Sorry, Joe.
I guess Messi's beer commercial series don't
CCTV.
count for like incredible film production. That's fine. I just need to know where the line is.
A man who looks totally comfortable drinking beer? Yeah.
Oh, very much. Comfortable doing everything. Miami beat Nashville 2-1 over the weekend. They have now been developing this really impressive win streak. They've won 3 games straight since coming out of the Club World Cup. Messi's got fire in his left boot, which has been so much fun to watch. He's got that crazy slaloming goal against CF Montreal. And then in this game, he scores a Messi free kick. It's the same free kick he scored for the last 15 years or whatever it is. It's amazing. It's delightful. It's so much fun. And then you get the Joe Willis, oopsie, out of the back, that gifts the ball to Messi, and that's the second goal. There really wasn't a lot between these two teams in this game, where Miami do end up getting on the score sheet fairly early in the first half through that free kick, and they kind of control the rest of the first half. Then Nashville grabbed 1 goal back through Hani Mukhtar through maybe their best revenue stream, which is Andy Nahar being the playmaker, because Nashville with this team in their 4-4, let me try this again, Nashville being this team in their 4-2-2 setup, nailed it. They are a team that get the width and so much of the playmaking, not just like bodies out wide, but they get the playmaking from Dan Levitz on one side and Andy Nahar on the other. Those two guys have provided assist after assist after assist this season. And Nahar in particular is just this exquisite possession player who's always been, I think, a favorite of us on TSS. He is so much fun to watch. And he plays that kind of half-space Kevin De Bruyne-esque cross to find a crashing Mukhtar, and it's 1-1 Nashville. And really, again, there wasn't much between these two teams after that, where it is the Joe Willis oopsie that changes the game and Miami hop into the driver's seat and win this one 2-1. I think that there is not a lot between these teams is actually not a bad thing for Miami. Yes, they're playing at home. They got to control the game state for this match, so they didn't need to go all out in the attack. They could play a slightly more controlled game. And the encouragement for Miami, the encouragement for Nashville is simple, right? You played a tight game against a team with 2 of the best attackers, and MLS fresh off of a really important U.S. Open Cup win. Like, we don't need to spin that's for Nashville at all. I think it's very clear that they're in a really good spot right now. For Miami, the encouragement is that you were a really, fine defensive team in this game. Like you did not capitulate in your own half. Instead, you played like a real 90-plus minutes of grown-up soccer in this game. And that is not where Miami's been all season long. That is where they've been really throughout the latter stages of their Club World Cup run, getting out of the group stage, back to the regular season. They're playing ball that looks cohesive. And to do that against a Nashville team that is a very, very good team is impressive to me. And all of a sudden, you look at the standings, and Miami aren't on top of the Shield race based off of points, but then you go and filter it by points per game. They're the only team in the league averaging 2 points per game. Everybody else is in the 1.9s or lower. They are on top of the Shield race right now. When you look at points per game, if they continue this form, they will be back-to-back Supporter Shield winners. So Miami are suddenly, even outside of the transfer talk, finding themselves in a better spot than they've been all year.
A question for either of you, because I do not have an answer to it. When we were talking about the issues with Miami, when they were struggling, I think it was Julian Gressel, Jeff, who came out and basically said, like, the knock on them is essentially if you don't let them score in the first 30 minutes, they get frustrated, they start to lose their composure, and then you can get at them. In these last 5 games in which they have won all 5, I think the latest they have scored is in the 33rd minute, and that was against CF Montreal when they end up winning 4-1. Aside from that, they have been scoring early and often. Do we have any thoughts on what has changed for them, how they've been able to start scoring goals? Have players returned? Is there just more consistency and form in this team? Did Jordi Alba need to be a designated player once again? Was it that renewal that made him finally kick into gear and this whole team kick into gear? Any possible thoughts?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, might as well be a combination of all of it because they haven't conceded a single goal between minutes 31 and 45 in MLS play since Memorial Day.
Really? Wow, okay.
I know.
Right.
It's a 5-game sample for them, but at the same point, they've scored 3 and they've conceded 0, so apparently Gressel did them a favor there. One last parting gift, maybe, by pointing out their flaw that they couldn't see in the mirror themselves. No, I think that part of it is also we're just in the kind of low-scoring part of the MLS season. Not to discredit all of this, but at the same point, it is you're playing in Florida, and you have an advantage if you play your games in Florida. Teams in Texas know that they can play these sort of... It's like why Houston tried to lean so hard into the Hector Herrera as our possessive epicenter bit, was because it was like, okay, he is technical enough to weave through, and he still has enough athleticism to get through parts of the midfield, and we can slowly kind of bleed teams out of games. But I think that Miami is getting more comfortable ceding more touches in the defensive third, which is generally a sign that you're comfortable in your defensive shape. It also means that they're keeping a lot of their possession kind of in the midfield. And I think that it's working really well. I think that Miami does, with the way that they were set up, with the way that they were always designed to work under Javi Mascherano. The idea was to be this team that could just kind of pass around and
That's
through.
Breaking news.
I know.
All right, good to know.
Theoretically, the idea is that this is a machine that's going to work really well as long as the thing keeps. It's like a Rube Goldberg. Mm-hmm. As long as momentum sustains and it keeps moving to the next step of it, it's going to be entertaining. If it falls apart, if it can catastrophically fall apart if one of those connections doesn't go, because this is not designed to do anything else, right? And unfortunately, you look at it, and a lot of their issues have been that. Lionel Messi's wonderful free kick or weaving shot gets stopped, or younger opponents are now able to take the ball off of his feet as he's dribbling upfield, who previously couldn't do that because of where he's at in his career. Luis Suarez, scoring goals is a thing that he's just kind of forgotten to do a lot this season. And so there are parts of it that are still not working as calibrated, but I think that overall they're figuring out another way to go about this. Some of this is more reliant on set pieces, as we're getting into. I think that they're still too reliant on Lionel Messi, and I would be too if I signed him to play for my soccer team. I probably would entrust him with a lot of my life at that point. But I think that you look, the last two games are 2-1 wins. Every single goal has been scored by Lionel Messi. I know that's such a simplistic way of framing this, but that's kind of been the summary of 2025 to date for them. Is like, if Lionel Messi is on the field and he's doing his thing, they can beat anybody in Major League Soccer and a team from Portugal. If they are not, if he is contained, if he is hurt, if he is tired, whatever the case may be, they struggle. And they don't have that second look. And maybe this is them figuring out what that second look is, which is to say, just to be a more we're going to make it miserable for you and that'll be fun for us, which I think is generally not a bad alternative look to have. But it still is a lot of reliance on a near 38-year-old man to continue doing what he's been doing for 20 plus years now.
I think another key aspect for this season for Miami is going to be the revelatory news that Don Garber found those extra pages to the MLS transfer policy guidebook. They were lost for so long, and he finally unearthed them. And it turns out that you can just sign another player who isn't a designated player, even though they are a designated player. Joe, talk to me about Rodrigo de Paul and what's happening there.
Yeah, so this is where I've got to hold my hands up at least a little bit. I'm not all the way ready to do that yet. But last week's show, we talked about DePaul coming to Miami. Those reports are real. There's real interest. There have been real talks. DePaul wants to come. It certainly seems like he's on board. And I talked about how Sergio Busquets would have to retire, and that really didn't seem like there was any other way that this was going to have to happen. If they wanted to sign DePaul, he'd have to be a DP. And then our favorite Paul, not Rodrigo DePaul, Paul Tenorio, comes out and does a bit of reporting on this whole matter, and didn't rule out the possibility of a Busquets retirement, but did note that would shock a lot of people around Major League Soccer if Busquets were to walk away midseason. And instead, Paul wrote, quote, "The assumption would be that DePaul would join on a more modest, cap-friendly salary now before negotiating a new deal in 2026. The only way that this would work then, because if he comes over on a big transfer fee, it doesn't matter how much money he's making, he's still going to have to be a DP, essentially. The only way that this would happen then is if he was coming over on a loan deal for the rest of this season from Atletico Madrid, who were willing to defer their payment, right? Who say, don't pay us now, we'll take the money in the winter. And then they sign him to a permanent deal after that first half season has already been played, heading into the 2026 season. This is certainly against the spirit of the MLS roster rules, where everybody will know that Rodrigo de Paul is a DP. Like literally everybody is going to know that he's going to be a DP as soon as Sergio Busquets walks out the door. This will not sit well with other MLS teams, but Taylor, I gotta say, it will sit well with you because you were right all along. I'm back on the genius train. It's at least a possibility now, not that just Rodrigo de Paul joins, but that he joins and is just a straight up addition rather than I mean, he'd still kind of be a straight-up addition even if Busquets left, because I think that might actually be a win for Miami all the way across the board. Addition by subtraction and addition by addition. But Taylor, genius, confirmed.
I appreciate all the praise, fellows, though I think my two reasons for being a genius are thinking that CJ DeSantos might not be a starting MLS goalkeeper and suggesting that MLS would find a way to help Miami get another key player.
Taylor,
I'm not sure that's full genius territory, but I'll take it all the same.
What you're failing to understand is that the MLS genius bar level is low. So you are leaps. You have hopped up on that bar. You are standing on top of it. I'm there. I'm looking up at you in adoration.
Oh man,
Yes.
Like I asked you all this off air. Like, what happens if this happens? Like, do we think that there is a public sort of airing of grievances? Do we think we're going to hear about it from other owners or GMs, or is it just going to be a quiet whispering of frustration, a Joe Pesci-esque like quiet muttering where you can hear obscenities, but you can't really picture out what's actually being said?
Feel the rest of the obscenities. Yeah. No, I think that this has a chance.
Yeah.
This has a chance to be like a genuine like alarms rung from across the country. You're lighting the torches all across the country so that every other team can get in on this, because how else can you possibly see? We know all of the mountains in this country in every single MLS market. No, I think that it would be massive. Like, there are already teams like owners and GMs who are watching very closely. I know that for sure. From rival teams, other conference, all that sort of thing. Like, they're looking like, how do you keep getting away with this? Because when they were doing this in the summer of 2023, you have to keep in mind that there's a very important... Sometimes when the MLSPA releases its salary info, it feels like it's a little bit of just like, we're going to give the writers a bone and we're going to give everyone some coverage that they can do and get some transparency so that the underpaid domestic guys know what the TAM guys are making so that they can go into negotiations with their performance metrics and say, I deserve a raise, right? So like, those are obviously like the latter, the player benefit is obviously the primary focus of this sort of thing. The coverage team by team and nationally available from doing this is a huge benefit, right? I think it also gives some vital information for these owners and chief soccer officers who are looking at these sorts of things and saying, no, I don't understand how this could be possible. Because when they were doing this in the summer of 2023, it was before one of these MLSPA drops would have included Messi, Busquets, Alba, right? So then we knew that they were able to keep certain players in their roster, get rid of certain players after that came out in October. But we've now had one of those where we know for a fact that Busquets and Alba are on salaries now with Alba's raise. This is one of those things where it's like if Miami had waited to sign Alba's extension or just not done it, which would have been my option. But if we have to extend Jordi Alba on a designated player salary for 2 seasons, probably could have been more covert about it if they waited until after the salary release. And maybe that's strategic by the union because like I think that there is some... Just about when the numbers, I don't want to get into all that necessarily. I think there's 4 people interested in the timeline of an MLSPA salary release. But I think that you get into how can you do
all
this?
All 4 are listening, though, so at least there's that.
Well, I would say 2 to 3 are on this podcast right now. Fair. But I overall, there's just no way that you can really do this. There's no way that you could look any person who understands like soccer in 2025 in the eye and say, we're waiting to deliberate unless we are confident that Rodrigo De Paul can play at an MLS level before we spring the purchase option. And we're probably not going to know until the end of the playoffs if this World Cup winner, who's one of the best two-way midfielders of his generation, can cut it in Major League Soccer. Like, it's so beyond the pall. If they're able to do this, and if they're able to do this in a way where they get some sort of buyout and re-sign of Sergio Busquets or something like that, so he's not a DP, it also looks really obvious and slimy, and he shouldn't be able to buy a player out and then sign them to a lower deal in the same season, right? So I still maintain I don't see a way, unless the league is willing to have a genuine mutiny among at least 28 of its other ownership groups. I don't really, with the obvious like ally being whichever team wants to do this next, right? Of course, right? I don't know how they can do this. I really don't.
Don't a lot of teams... my assumption is a lot of teams, though, are playing at least a little loose with some of the salary restrictions and exploiting loopholes along the way. Not just the LA Galaxy, but not just the LA Galaxy. I will never forget when they were just like, you know, we're going to have 4 DPs and see what the league does. And really tried to play a game of chicken on that front until their their hand was called. So, like, is this a thing that a lot of teams do, and it's just Miami do it the most publicly and get away with it to the grandest scale? Or is it truly, do you all feel like that Miami are operating in a different way, or maybe allowed to operate in a different way than other teams might be?
I mean, they're certainly operating in a different way. Like, nobody in recent years has done it this publicly with Rodrigo de Paul. And to be clear, Miami haven't done anything wrong yet. Like, Busquets could retire midseason still. That's on the table.
This season, they haven't done anything wrong yet. Yeah.
Well said. So we don't know how this is all going to play out. I just wanted to bring it back up today because I was pretty strongly, Busquets would have to retire, and then I looked like a fool really fast. So I wanted to raise that so that I could be publicly mocked. But this is just... It's obvious, right? This one is obvious. It is against the spirit of the roster rules. Jeff, the point you're making there about, like, nobody's going to buy the fact that you're, like, doing a trial for Rodrigo de Paul to see if you actually want to keep him around. That's a joke. Like, that's ridiculous. Everybody knows that from the second he joins Miami, he will be a designated player, level player, right? So he will be eventually on a DP deal as far as the salary is concerned. And Miami are in a position at the moment where they're at least toying around with the fact, it would seem, like, could we do everything? Could we have our cake and eat it too? We'll see.
But if you all had to guess, and I know this is a large question that is potentially unknowable, like if Miami wanted to go with a what about defense, how many teams do you feel like they could realistically point to and be like, well, what about this? What about that? What about when you all did this? Like that, I guess that's what I'm asking, is how often are roster rules a little looser than we would think, and teams kind of find ways to navigate and the league is okay with it? Or is it truly the case that it's basically like Miami and LA, the Galaxy that is, are oftentimes trying to kind of push the limits, and then other teams are more inclined to kind of stick with the rules as they are?
Can I rattle off without, like, the journalist hat on and just as the podcaster
Please.
hat on, as I've heard people at least, like, call this, like, the Tata Martino era Atlanta team would be, I think, people's first point where they look at and say that's 6 or 7 designated players, especially because allocation money and the U22 initiatives weren't nearly in the states that they are now. I think that you mentioned the Galaxy team that tried to keep both Dos Santos brothers and 2 actually good soccer players as designated players. And that would be an obvious parallel as well.
Yeah.
You could probably get a few more, but I think there's actually, like, there are bonuses that are handed to keep players on supplemental roster slots who should otherwise be on senior. There are certain ones that'll be to keep a player under the senior maximum so they don't have to go into allocation money. Like, these are the sorts of things that I think when we talk about MLS teams kind of fudging the books a little bit, sponsorship considerations, ownership stakes in clubs in Sweden, these sorts of things that we've seen handed to MLS players, including Zlatan. Those don't really compare to, we were told in this league you can only have 3 players earning above a certain threshold, all in, including transfer spend. And now you very clearly can have a 4th if... And then you can fill it in. And whatever you say on the back half of that about Major League Soccer, about Inter Miami, about Lionel Messi, is not going to be flattering. So I think that while there have been examples, and again, even just to use that Atlanta parallel, because I think it's the more recent one, and it's the one that came off well, they won MLS Cup for it after all, you're still talking about things like Leandro Gonzalez Perez, right? Like, who's like, again, very good defender at the time on his day. He had his flaws and he had his bad days, as every defender does, as every man does, as every person does, really. But I think that it's a different scale when you're talking about we signed 2 guys, especially when you're looking at Alba and Busquets. That's really what this comes down to is, no, you committed to paying ridiculous amounts for guys who can't really do the full function of their entire roles anymore. You can't just benefit and say one of them is going to be our honorary whatever. Lucrative.
Honorary. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Everybody does have their bad days except for Joe, who is flawless 24/7. Joe, would you like to spend a moment talking about Nashville, who are ahead of Inter Miami in the Supporter Shield race? They do lose this game. I think to your point, they are in a pretty fine position overall. Are there areas of concern for you? Are there areas to address this summer to really push them further down that or further up that Supporter Shield ranking to push them into more contention for MLS Cup in the end?
My honest answer is no, which is not something I thought I would say about this team coming into the year. And part of the reason why there aren't a lot of things for them to do this summer is because they don't have a lot of options this summer. They've got all 3 DP spots filled. They don't have a lot of wiggle room in terms of, hey, let's go out and be the Columbus Crew and grab one more piece and maybe that's going to elevate us. There's not that option with Mukhtar, Surridge, and Zimmerman as their 3 DPs. when I was writing my transfer needs piece for backfield for each team, the thing that I kept coming back to was they could benefit from adding one more U22 player to this team, and a young defensive player in particular, because it certainly looks like all four of their first choice starters across the back line are 30 or older. So that is an area that I would be shocked if Nashville aren't looking at. They've got Chris Applewhite, I think, is the young homegrown center back for them who's gotten some minutes this year. They have some pieces coming through in that area. But even if they go out and grab a U22, that's not for this year, right? You're not counting on that player changing games for you. For Nashville, it's about continuing to lean into the things that have made them so good. And they've been good at darn near everything this year. So they are in the hunt. They're not a favorite for the Shield. They're not a favorite for MLS Cup when you look at the crowded field. But that they're in the discussion is massive, and they do have a legit shot to win one of these things.
All right, we're going to take one more break. That segment was two teams, one of them a bit more broadly than the other, but I think it was necessary to talk about what Miami's doing, what they might be doing, and where that could leave them. We're going to take a break, come back, and talk about a few more teams in the Supporters Shield race, and maybe a little bit of transfer news as well. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. During the break, Jeff Rueter gave me a stat that I found surprising, but I shouldn't be surprised by, because Jeff, of course, is going to tell us the benefits of Minnesota. Not trying to acknowledge your bias up front, Jeff, but not trying to hide it either. Tell me about Minnesota and their record since September. Is that right? Last year?
The bias here is I just watch this team more than a lot of people, because they are my entry point into watching the rest of the league for a lot of weeks when I'm in St. Paul.
That must be nice. That's DC United for me.
Yeah, no, it is very nice. I love Allianz Field. Like, it was just, it's like such a good, I'm sure in time it's going to be remembered kind of like Children's Mercy, where it's like, this was the prototype at the time, and then other teams kind of did their own thing on it. Neither here nor there. Since the start of September, well, okay, so here you go. So after Minnesota wins over the weekend, they get a really big 4-1 result over San Jose. They're up 3-0. They leak a soft goal, and then they score another one to at least repad the 3-goal advantage. So, like, you know, very good vibes there. They also have a comeback midweek to beat the Chicago Fire at home to advance to the semifinal. They will host the semifinal against Austin FC, and then the winner of that game hosts the final of the U.S. Open Cup. I don't even think I said Open Cup in there, did I?
You did now.
Since the start of September in MLS play, including the playoffs, no team has gotten more points than Minnesota United, with 61 points. Columbus is second with 59. Inter Miami has 59. They've also played a couple fewer games. So on points per game, they are second, but on raw points, they are first. They are doing so with the lowest rate of possession. These are all things that you've heard all the time from me and Joe and Matt Doyle and John Muller and all kinds of other people across the country. They do not keep the ball much. It was actually very funny. Like, one of the first coaches to actually scoff at the notion they won't want the ball, Bruce Arena, who is like, what are you talking about? They won't want the ball. And then after the game, he was like, I guess they didn't want the ball. So...
Wait, is that real? Did
I didn't get the post-game quote, but like the pre-game quote is real, and it seems very plausible. No, he was probably too mad at like Chicho Arango, who had just like kind of a head case meltdown in the second half of that game. It was pretty ugly. He was getting in the face of the referee, and like I was surprised he wasn't sent off. It wasn't quite Nuhu levels of like how dare you to the referee, but it was like not good. Nuhu, by the way. We'll get there at the end of this segment if we have time. Minnesota has been continuing to stick to the bit. We're going to be talking about two teams in this segment whose commitment to the bit have gotten them into contention for the Supporters Shield. Bear in mind right now there are 6 teams within 3 points of the Supporters Shield who are all level on games, and then there's Miami on top of it as well. It's a very, very good Shield race this year. Like the Philadelphia Union, Minnesota United is doing so with a staunch commitment to direct attacking, to earning every opportunity off of every set piece, to wringing chances out of what is usually seen as the like throwaway moments of a game, which is like free kicks just inside the attacking half, which usually are let's just restart the possession sequence, but let's get our defensive line advanced so that we have a higher line of engagement, and also we have more bodies to sustain possession. Or throw-ins from anywhere in the attacking half and lobbing them towards the mixer rather than just not. And teams are starting to catch on to that. Chicho Arango, before he was yelling at referees, was trying to like mark like a volleyball player at the net a long throw from Michael Boxall, to the point where we saw the magic spray come out for a throw-in, which is just not something I've ever seen before. So that was fun.
Amazing.
Yeah, teams are starting to catch on. And like I asked Ramsey about it after the game.
Wait, why did
this
that
is a real quote.
Why did that come out? To stop players from infringing, or
Right, because the round goes up in the face of the thrower,
Okay,
and
all
you
right.
have to back out. I actually didn't
It's
even
too
know you had to
close.
give space on the throw-in, I suppose. I
It
did
was
not
only
know
like
that was a rule.
a yard. It was like a yard. I think it's almost like a courtesy more than anything. But it was enough where, like, yeah, you look at the height
awesome.
difference of Lone of Boxall's arms versus a jumping Chicharrongo. It's like, yeah, that's enough space, I guess.
Right.
Like, even if he was pushing it. You just generally, it is a game model that Ramsey is confident, even as teams try to do this sort of shenaniganery to try to like stop it. He's like, okay, but we are the ones practicing it, and we are the ones who are at least controlling it. It is always better to be the one setting the tempo. It's the opposite of their possession model, where he's like, if we're the ones who are taking the kicks, they still have to react to every little variable we throw at them. And those variables can be the same 4 variables over in terms of like angles, target, who's launching it in, alt matchups, these sorts of things, but they're still very difficult to get all 4 of them in the moment in congested box. And so it continues to work. They're also very good at getting their shots on target. Part of their attacking model is that they are creating big chances. And only Inter Miami has a greater shot accuracy since the start of September last year than Minnesota. Tani Oluwaseyi and Kelvin Yeboah are like a genuine, functional, thriving strike partnership. So if you miss that throwback to like retro soccer, Minnesota's doing some of that too. There's like this really good sequence where Oluwaseyi dribbles all the way through the midfield and gets to like the end line at the left post and just kind of instinctively lobs a ball over Daniel and over the San Jose defense right onto the forehead of Kelvin Yeboah. And the way that they celebrate is like they both scored it. And that's what you want to see from your strike tandem. After the game in the locker room, they're jawing at their teammates. They're laughing. Like they're telling Markanich that he's going to suddenly take one of their striker jobs and they're going to have to learn how to play left wing back, and they don't want to do that. And then like cracking jokes with each other. Like it's just an incredible vibe between like this locker room right now, where I think it's fair to say that they are the favorites to win the Open Cup at this point. I don't think that they'll get the Shield. I think that there are just too many of these matchups where they won't hang very well. Teams that still have very well constructed midfields and comfortable how they use their possession instead of just we have the ball, well, don't we, will tend to do well. But it's been a really, really good evolution of this team under Eric Ramsey.
It's so impressive what Minnesota United have done. Like they are on the modern Mount Rushmore of MLS teams of rebuilding, right? FC Cincinnati are on that list. The LA Galaxy and their turnaround last year with Will Kuntz running the show, they're on that list. Minnesota, with how quickly things have turned around, Jeff, that stat that you led with, that since September they lead MLS in points. It's ridiculous, right? It is absolutely ridiculous that this is a team that last year when the season started did not have a coach. This is a team that last year when the season started were just barely into the Khaled Al-Ahmad tenure at the top of the front office. And now you look at what they've done. They have basically done everything right. You talked about, Jeff, their commitment to not having the ball, right? To being a compact defensive team. That is a legitimate identity. There's clear buy-in. The locker room vibes are great. I love that anecdote about the Markanich thing. All this is great. You talked about the set pieces, and that's not just free kicks and corners. It's also throw-ins. The other piece of the puzzle for Minnesota, and I think still the thing that there is the most concern that could be their weak point, is what happens when they have to have the ball. What happens when they concede, the opposition sits back and says, ha, you can't do your thing anymore. You can't sit back and defend. Now you have to break us down. Minnesota United know they're not great at that stuff, at least relative to the other things that they are great at. And so what do? They go get a right wing back who fits perfectly in their system that is, for some reason, not in the plains of Miami, for nobody understands that but Javier Mascherano. And they add him, and Julian Gressel has now become the starting player for them in that spot. Bongi Huanglane has moved either to a different spot on the field or has been on the bench, or there's been a little bit of rotation. But Gressel is starting most of these games now, right wing back. And he is one of the best chance creators from his spot in the league in sustained possession moments. Like, you just look at every single thing that this Minnesota team has done as a club, right? Not just a team, not just the roster. You look at what they've done as a club, they have basically had a big old A+ on the top of every paper they've turned in since the beginning of last year. They're a legit team. They're doing things better than most in MLS. I got a lot of respect for them.
There was one Go ahead.
I'm still a little confused. How do you control all the variables without having like the majority of possession ever? Or is that the idea, that because you're not controlling possession, you control the variables outside of having possession?
You at least get to control like the manner in which the opponent has to get through because you're so fortified in your defensive shape, I think, is their argument. That's my understanding of it, is the idea that like our team knows exactly how to position themselves. And
okay.
they can still do more fun stuff on the ball than I think. Like, there's a really good sequence. I think that ends up going out for a corner, and then they score the corner, and so everyone's like, here goes another set piece. But right before that, there's a moment where Gressel gets on the ball at like the edge of the defensive third of Minnesota, and he sees that he has Yeboah and Oluwaseyi in space, and instead of launching a ball up to them, decides to pass it back to Jefferson Diaz, the right-sided center back in proximity. And they end up playing this kind of like 5-player passing pentagon, I guess, to work through San Jose's really aggressive press and then suddenly get into space. And they're doing this genuine like champagne soccer stuff all the way up the field with short passes, first touches, all these sorts of things. This stuff that you like... If you just saw the bodies, you know, that old like World Cup commercial before the 2023 World Cup where you look and you think it's Kylian Mbappe and then it's the France women's team. It's like if they did that sort of thing, but you would think it's the Columbus Crew, and you could actually be very convinced with the manner in which they were playing upfield. And then it was a block shot that went out for a corner, and again, they scored that because that's more of their calling card. But they can do it, and if you talk to the players, they want more of the ball. The defenders want more of a break, so they will also say, I'd like to see some more stuff happening on the other end of the field after the game. But there will also be like Joaquin Pereira after the game speaking through a translator saying like, we would really like to have more of it, we would like to stay on the ball more, we would like to give opponents more to think about. So I think that could be the next evolution of it. The players certainly are willing to try, but then you get into the risk of, okay, how many variables can you throw in? Part of why like the September 1st date is important is because that's when this squad, the core of this squad, finally settled. Khaled El-Ahmad basically did a 3 to 4 window squad overturn over the span of 2 very aggressively. And so once it settled into shape a little bit better, they got better. But also that is when they really started committing to this bit rather than trying to be a ball dominant team in the matchup. So whether or not they try to reintroduce some of that, we'll see. But if nothing else, it's certainly something that the players and the fans have really come to relish, as far as I can tell when I'm in that press box, and that's cool to see again. I don't think I've really seen that sort of excitement about Minnesota since 2019. So.
Well, Jeff, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for that excitement. I'm happy for them committing to the bit, which it sounds like the Union are doing as well and did against the New York Red Bulls this past weekend with a 2-0 win. They are obviously top of the Supporter Shield race right now. Gentlemen, how are we feeling about the Union so far?
Yeah. What Philly have done this year has been amazing. This is not new information. What they did against the Red Bulls was so much fun to watch. They were about as dominant in the first half of that game. The first half ended 2-0. The game ends 2-0. The game was over by halftime. They were about as dominant in that game as you can possibly be. They allowed 0 shots from the Red Bulls in the first half, and they were all over the visitors in that game. The thing that stands out to me most when I watch the Union is really what Jeff said, and I like how you described it. It is their commitment, like it is their team-wide cohesion and aggression, right, that you see all the way across. They are one of the leaders in the league in recoveries this season. They're hunting after every loose ball. They are clearly... this feels like something that Bobby Warshaw would say and probably has said at some point. Like effort can transform a team. Like effort can change a team and their fortunes. And the Philadelphia Union culturally have built an environment where effort is prized and demanded. And that's not true of every MLS team. I know that is like kind of one of those more intangible things that I don't always love to talk about, but I think it is there for the Union when you watch them. The other thing, though, that stands out to me most when I watch the Union, and this has been true all year long, even at the start of the year when we weren't sure exactly how good this team was going to be, the connection that their forwards have in their 4-2-2 is elite. And it doesn't always have to be the same guy. So over the weekend, it was Ty Baribo, and it was Bruno Damiani, who was their first-year player. And those two guys understand their movement and understand the other's movement so well. And I think it's the second goal. The first goal that they score in this game is off of a set piece. The second goal that they score is Ty Baribo, who's kind of drifted a little bit over to the left side. He plays the ball over to Quinn Sullivan, who's the right-sided attacking midfielder in their 4-2-2, who's like kind of in the right half space, just maybe right of the center line of the field vertically. And so Baribo passes the ball to Sullivan, and the Red Bulls are like, oh, great, Sullivan has the ball, the play's in front of us. And while the Red Bulls are thinking that thought in their mind, it's Bruno Damiani who spins off in behind, and Sullivan plays the ball over to him, and Damiani goes and scores. We see those kinds of third-man runs where one striker and maybe one of the attacking mids are occupying the defense's attention and the other one spins off. Or we see quick little layoffs from one to the other, or all of these little moments that make it so clear that players, like I talked about with Columbus earlier, they understand exactly what is asked of them. They understand exactly how to function in that system. Add that to the fact that the Union are just more talented than I thought they were coming into the season. I thought they'd be, I think I had them in the playoffs. I didn't have them as the Shield winners. So I don't deserve credit for that. But they're probably more talented than we all thought they were. Probably everybody but Ernst Tanner and maybe the players thought they were. Where Denley Jean-Jacques has been a big plus for them. Lukic in midfield has been a big plus for them. Quinn Sullivan has continued to be like a well above average MLS starting player. Their strikers are elite at what they do. Kai Wagner is still the best left back chance creator in MLS. Their center back play is still very, very good. Andre Blake's had a bounce back here. All of a sudden, it's not just like a team that, runs around and tries hard and has the bit that they've really committed to. It is that, and it's also the fact that they're better than we thought they were at an individual player level, and those players are functioning together as a unit, even beyond the defensive dirty work stuff. They're also able to do some of the attacking finesse stuff, and they're elite on set pieces. They've also checked basically every box. They're really good, they've been really good, and they're going to keep being really good.
Do they need to add anywhere, strengthen anywhere to continue to be really good? They are presently 1 point ahead of San Diego in the Supporter Shield race. How do they stay there, Joe?
I think they stay there by staying the course in large part. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
agree.
see an obvious hole in this team. If I'm going to add, and to be clear, I would love to see the Union add a piece this summer. I don't know that given how they operate, that's going to be a $4 million player. 'Cause, I mean, that's not even a ton when you think about what MLS teams are spending these days. But $4 million for the Union is a lot of money. I don't even see them doing that necessarily after moving Daniel Gazdag on earlier this season because they haven't lapsed. Like, they have continued to push forward. But the way that I've thought about it is if you can find another player at any spot, basically but striker and goalkeeper, and you think they can make your team better either this season or in the long term, go get him. Like, you have the flexibility to do that. You have the DP spot that's open if you want to swing, or you just have the roster flexibility to go out there and add whoever you want. So that's what I would look at, but I don't think we're looking at the Union going out there and doing what Columbus are hoping to do or what Miami are hoping to do or what Cincinnati with Thomas Muller and their very public courting of Thomas Muller seem to be hoping to do. They will be more low-key this summer, I would imagine. Could be wrong, but that would be my expectation, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Is there a player that you think of, or I guess like you've given the type of player, but like a player who does come to mind that is maybe on the bench or has kind of fallen out of appeal in the starting 11 for his club that might be available that would make the Union better?
I did the whole Sangbin John thing the other day as the
Yeah,
cash
good word.
trade
Made it
idea,
happen.
and he
Made
went to
that
St.
happen.
Louis. So that's the one I had, Taylor. I had one bullet in my chamber, and they shot it towards St. Louis, which, come on, that's still pretty good. I still did good. I didn't do great, but I did good.
You did great.
What about for the Red
Thanks, Jim.
Bulls, who lose this game? They had Choupo-Moting in there. They had Forsberg in there. Are they going to have another designated player in there?
They would like to.
Yeah, go, Jeff. Take it.
No, I mean they still would like to. And the idea was with the Timo Werner talks was not that there was necessarily urgency because this is also his off season. Though granted, with how little he played last spring, I would be champing
Everything's
at
an
the bit
off
to
season
get
if
back.
you try hard enough. That's the takeaway.
But like honestly, fair play. Like take your breaks in this increasingly congested sports schedule where you can find them as long as you can have them. So fair play there. No, still very much the guy. There is still heavy interest in bringing him, reuniting him with Emil Forsberg, seeing how he runs off of Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting. Like I still haven't been given any reason to think that is any less likely to happen. It's just a matter of timing. The issue, whether it's with Philly trying to get someone in time who can integrate into such a staunch, you need to understand our system sort of model of game, or it is the Red Bulls who are trying to bring in another designated player. Their time is of the essence, right? And it's a little bit less of a concern when you're the Red Bulls because you're not a contender for all of these trophies right now. You're going for another MLS Cup run ideally. But with Philadelphia and the Shield, it's just kind of hard to see how you can get in a player and then like integrate them into the system, get them drilled in, and then they are an upgrade both in quality and in style over other guys. So
For the Red Bulls, like I hear what you're saying that it's the off season for Werner. There's no real rush. Flip side, I just picture him like just eating full-on breakfast buffets every morning, just maybe not being in the greatest of form coming in. In my mind, you want to get that guy in quickly to get him training and acclimated for the stretch run. But
Well, and that's just the Red Bulls' whole thing, right? Like we've been waiting for them to add this extra piece for years now, and over the offseason, that extra piece was Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, who's been a good, useful starting number 9 in MLS, but is not transformative for them. Like we've been waiting for them to do something. NYCFC at least, even though I roasted them after the primary window when they didn't replace Santi Rodriguez, at least they've already got that deal done and are moving forward now to give themselves a legitimate chance to, they're out of the Shield race, of course, but to give them a chance to do something in the playoffs. The Red Bulls are waiting for a guy to say yes to their salary demands or to lower his salary demands so that they can sign him and then integrate him, and then all of a sudden you're even deeper in the season. And even then, you still don't know if the dude's going to be really impactful because he hasn't played soccer. Like, I don't know. It's a mess for the Red Bulls, who haven't really taken their roster build seriously in the last several years.
You know, there's like turn-based strategy games where you like do all your moves and then you hit advance, and then like it's the summer and then you hit advance and it's the winter.
Sure.
Is it possible that the Red Bull multi-club ownership model is turn-based, and so they just have to wait for the other Red Bull teams to get their business done before it comes back around?
Yeah, it's turn-based, and the New York branch just never gets a turn. That's how the game works. It's like, they're the little brother. It's like, we're skipping you, dude. Like, sorry, Leipzig needs us. Come on.
They accidentally
draw four,
hit
sorry.
pass. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing to be done about it.
You
guys
have
did
all of your workers are on automated. I'm picturing Civilization here. Like, yeah, you just unfortunately your whole move's already been determined for 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
My bad. Yeah.
Still ahead of DC United. Final team to talk about in the Supporter Shield race would be Vancouver. Joe, last we talked about them, we were pretty excited about them. This time around, maybe less optimism for how things are going?
Yeah, it's 4 losses in their last 5 for Vancouver. Now, what
bad.
I will say is this game against Colorado that they lose 3-0 on Saturday is their first game with Seb Berhalter and Brian White back in the team in the regular season after their Gold Cup run. Vancouver have been just absolutely destroyed by MLS's scheduling policies this year, right? I mean, they have been they've been done dirty by the fact that having players that go and achieve things on the international level is actually a bad thing in Major League Soccer because you don't get to have those players. So, I don't know. I would be extremely frustrated about that if I was a Vancouver Whitecaps fan. There is a part of me, though, that wonders, and I'm not ready to sell all my stock for Vancouver. There's part of me that wonders if they're just out of gas, right? Like, their availability list is still long, which is to say that they're still missing a lot of players. Andres Cubas, their only healthy DP on their roster because Ryan Gauld's been injured all season, is also now injured and has an ankle issue. And you go and look, and they're missing Adekugbe, and they're missing Aliam. I mean, they're still missing a bunch of guys that have real roles in this team. And then, of course, they are still missing Ryan Gauld, who is their single biggest impactful attacking player, and they've barely had him all year. So I think it looks to me as though they're running on fumes at the moment. And Colorado just outplayed them. Like, Colorado were straight up first to almost every ball in that game over the weekend. They were better on set pieces. They were better in open play. Georgia Mihalovic and Cole Bassett were running that midfield, which has been a real strength for Vancouver this year. I am worried about the Caps. I'm not out on them. I'm out on them as a Shield winner at this stage, which is a real shame because of what they'd accomplished in the first half of the year, right up to that CONCACAF Champions Cup final. I am not out on them still being a team that regains some of their form, finds a way to have Jesper Sorensen rotate a little bit and get guys back, fit enough to go and play some really good ball, because they were playing amazing ball in the first half of the year. And I think circumstances more than anything have scuttled their season. I'm hoping it's a good story. I'm hoping that we see Vancouver come back and find something before the season ends.
Where are we on the Ryan Gauld injury? I've seen anywhere from expected to return 3 weeks ago to
headline.
3 weeks from now.
Yes. I have nothing to add to
right.
the question you just asked.
Yeah, the latest I saw was from, was it the Province? It was one of the outlets up in Vancouver, so apologies if I got this wrong, but I hope I got it right, saying that Vancouver was determined not to rush it because Gauld is so ingrained with relationships with a lot of players in the field where they felt like he can hit the ground running whenever they get him back, as long as they can get him back at his best. Of course, he hasn't played much under this coach, so there is some concern about that, and I would like my best player back as soon as possible if I can, have my way, but no bones about it. The other thing that's just kind of worth saying here.
What? Like, I'm sorry. I understand that this is not your logic, Jeff, but
of course
he's so integral and connects with everyone so well and is the string puller in that whole team that they're not worried about rushing him back?
Right. They're like, he can just take his time to get fully healthy instead of par healthy. And then we get him fully healthy in the out. I know,
but the regular season matters.
The logic is sound. The logic is sound there. Like, that does make sense. You want a guy back and fit. Reading between the lines, that is very clearly like, we don't know if he's coming back. Like, we don't know if he's going to be fit. I mean, there was talk. Vancouver were hoping to get him back for the Champions Cup final, which is like more than a month ago now. We are so far past the timelines that were initially tossed out for this. I think this is not informed at all. It seems to me that there's a very, very, very real chance that we don't see Ryan Gauld play soccer this year. So beyond what we've already seen in the first week of the season.
Do we want to try to end with a positive note for Vancouver, or it is what it is for Vancouver.
I mean, unless Jeff has a huge positive, at the moment, it is what it is. Like, the positive is that you played a lot of really good soccer this year, and that it's the same group of players, I mean, albeit a slightly hobbled group at the moment, and they should be able to get back to some of that stuff, but it's not going to be easy.
We do sometimes get frustration/criticism from supporters of perceived smaller teams in the league who don't always get a ton of coverage. So let's take a moment to talk about RSL, specifically about if they're going to lose one of their best players. That should do it, right? That should make everybody happy. Diego Luna, the source of some rumors, gentlemen. How are we feeling about this?
Yeah, unsurprised. I mean, I think generally there is interest, if not in teams getting American players, there's definitely media interest in American players getting linked, and therefore it can be very good for an outlet sometimes. I wouldn't be surprised if Celta Vigo is in for him. Celta Vigo, of course, has saw two players leave for Major League Soccer this winter, loaning Luca De La Torre to San Diego and then selling Jonathan Bamba to Chicago. So it is a market that they're obviously very aware of, even if it is as more of a seller's capacity. In historical context, I think with Luna, what my understanding has been talking with sources is that most teams who come in for Luna kind of try to gaslight whatever team has him. And it's a lot of like, we're doing you a favor by even calling. Look at the kid. Like, he's so short. He's kind of stocky. He doesn't really look like a soccer player, does he? Oh, and there's just, so much inconsistency and all this stuff. I can't believe we're calling you. We're going to do you a favor. Let's offer you like $3 million, let's say, and let's take your heart and soul playmaker. So the valuations are just really wrong, and the reasons for them are unconvincing. So RSL is in no rush. Look, he signed an extension last year. I think he's building a house or has a house in if not Sandy, then probably around Salt Lake, if I remember right. Seems happy enough there. Like, it doesn't seem like there's that same sort of urgency. And I would be very curious to hear the conversations with Pochettino as well, if he's even weighing in on this sort of thing. Like, is it better to have one of your form guys stay in Major League Soccer where he is starting and being the guy through the World Cup and gets time off between now and then, or to have him enter a rotation, right? It's just like a really interesting case by case. We talked about this with Ajimeng last week, right? So I'm not sure what that calculus would be. The sense I've gotten is that RSL would be very surprised if a valuation came in that met their number that would then see Diego Luna leave.
I think my advice to them would be to point out that Lionel Messi is fairly good and not fairly tall. That is my response to he's
Well
so
said.
short. Yeah,
Big if true.
Well said.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
I'm breaking news all over the
Genius.
place. Maybe
Again.
I am a genius. That's clearly it. My final genius observation: Lionel Messi and Diego Luna, both not that tall. You're welcome, listeners. I hope you've learned something specifically from Jeff and Joe, less so from me. Jeff Rueter, thank you, my friend, for going well over an hour to talk about many, many Major League Soccer things.
Same time next week.
And San Diego FC, thank you as well.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Taylor. I don't even think we talked about DC United firing Troy Lesane on this episode, which is probably a mistake on our part.
Nah, it's
Also,
going to fix everything. We're good.
That's
Pretty telling.
fitting. It wasn't, okay, here, very quick, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't all his fault. There, he was naive in parts of it, but wow, he was kind of set up to be the fall guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. I talked to Ted Meyer at a Richmond Kickers game this weekend. He does the DC United podcast, and it was mostly like just me grimacing and wincing, asking him questions about how he is sustaining doing a podcast and sustaining his mental health at the same time. And he said they find a way. So be sure to check out his podcast if you want to hear more about DC United and how firing Troy Lesane is totally definitely going to fix everything, and it's not at all an inherent ownership problem that can't be fixed easily or quickly. Totally going to work out well, DC supporters. Look forward to that. Listeners, thank you all for supporting us and hopefully enjoying this one, aside from that last little caveat at the end. We greatly appreciate all of your support and listenership, and we'll talk to you again very soon.